Welcome back to the Maximum Cricket Podcast. This is episode number 61. My name is Munter, and on today's show, Australia are saved by the rain, but not before Zak Crawley makes me eat my own words with a breathtaking 100. Speaking of hundreds, Marnus finally broke the duck, and in the end helped Australia with some massive help from the rain, save the test, and in turn retain the earn. We have Jacko, and we have a post-holiday Lugsy. Boys, straight into it here. After day 3 of the 4th Ashes Test, England have dominated probably 90 to 95% of that Test match, and we're steering down the barrel of tying that Ashes up 2-all, heading into a tasty finale at the Oval next week. Unfortunately, that will be taken away because of the rain. Lugsy, let's start with you because you are back from a massive boozy holiday. Welcome back.
Not that boozy.
And secondly,
good to be
rained
back.
out tests, real nemesis of Test cricket. Is there anything worse?
Yeah. In life, no. Certainly not in cricket, but in life also, not really. The way you were just summing up how good that 5th Test could have been as well. I mean, that almost sticks the knife in one last time for us, really, doesn't it? Just the way this Ashes is built from the first Test. England sort of coming out a bit off, but we can talk about, I guess, in a bit more later. But like England just building so nicely towards this crescendo, that would have been a big last Test. I have no doubt, even though Aussie was slowing down, that they would have came out all guns firing for that 5th one, and we could have had a real great series, and we've sort of been robbed of that. So, apart from the Australian fans, who I'm sure are fizzing, I think 99% of the neutral are pretty gutted with the rain coming.
Jacko, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, sort of on review, it's got to be bittersweet for England. Obviously, bitter that the Urn's gone, but sweet that Zak Crawley is actually a Test opener now, as opposed to what the TMC was saying about him. So, Chennai Super King, Zak Crawley, just add him to the list. We've motivated. But yeah, I mean, as Crom said, just as the neutral, we've just been robbed of what could have been one of the best Test matches maybe ever, and it's just going to go down as sort of the series of what ifs now. I think the couple of big ones, like what if England had picked Wood and Woakes earlier, and what if the spinners didn't get injured, and now what if there's no rain? So a bit of a shame. It's funny how you hit 6 or 7 and all you hope for is rain to cool cricket off, and that sort of goes until you make it to a high level, or you're watching high level, and then suddenly rains the devil again. Because there's nothing better than a rainy day when you're a club cricketer. But the switch changes, and you get high enough up that you go, oh, actually, okay, I do want to be back out there playing. So just a dagger that we're missing out on what we're shaping up to be one of the great series ending tests ever, maybe.
As producer Gav once said, no one hates cricket more than club cricketers. Hoping for it to rain when you're playing because you don't have to deal with it, but when you're watching, that's where you don't want it. But I was just thinking about how we didn't get the grandstand finish at the Oval, and we didn't even get a grandstand finish in this Test. Like it would have been a different story if it's like day 5, and it's just like 9 men around the bat, Australia trying to survive, trying to regain the earn, and it goes one way or the other. Like that would have been something that would have added to the legacy of this series. But it just feels like it's now, I don't know if we can call it the greatest series ever, because going into the last Test, it just doesn't have the same feeling. So bit of a shame. So
just on that club cricket thing, there's actually been a few times where we've been out playing hoping to get rained out just so we can go inside to watch the Black Caps. Literally just giving up playing just so we can get inside and actually watch other guys do it.
Oh yeah, we'd rather do like everything cricket related except actually play.
So boys, like obviously every man and their dog at the moment is just trying to change the rules of cricket, trying to change the fact that there's no roofs in these grounds. All of a sudden, for no reason at all. And I just wanted to capture it. So I chucked up a story on Instagram and asked for some help from our our followers for this opening segment. We wanted solutions for rain and loss of overs as it's cricket's biggest nemesis. So we basically asked, how can we fix this problem? And the two most common suggestions were building a roof on every cricket ground in the world, and have extra days available to either play or make up the overs. There were a couple others, but these were the real common denominators. So, Jacko, give me some visceral takes on these suggestions. Do you rate it? Are you pro it, or are you anti it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start before I really launch. We'll start with the extra days. I suppose we've got 25 days for this series. I mean, losing two, unfortunately, has been a massive effect on it. But yeah, I think adding a day here or there, it's where do you start, where do you stop? Is there only extra days in the Ashes and World Test Championships, and what series add? Because yeah, I don't know if like I want to see us play an extra day against Sri Lanka at the end of the summer when we've scored 700 and they've been out twice. Like there's scales to it.
I don't think we just keep playing, Jacko. I think it's only for rain affected games. I don't think we're playing start preparing them. It's just really Kane's just seeing them well.
Imagine losing by 2 innings.
Yeah, be quite something. But yeah, I think the extra
West Indies are about 25-day game.
Yeah, geez, they would have asked for an extra one at the start. But yeah, and I think the roof is just I just can't see that happening. I just can't see that as a solution. I think, what are we like? Are we putting a sail up? Are we putting is it just going to be a giant tent over the ground? Like, how do we actually practically do that over a cricket ground? The roof is just.
Do people have no concept of money? Do people have no concept of money and how these things are built?
Test cricket is scraping by, and we want to put like $20 million roofs on every stadium. But yeah, I think
in fairness, you just asked for solutions, Munter.
Yeah.
Well, they're not
exactly.
really.
You didn't say to
creating more problems.
Yeah, it would in the long
run. But yeah, I think the roof is just like it does solve an issue, but it doesn't like change the fact that Test cricket's Test cricket, and it is like the elements are involved. Like there's something about the weather on day one. Does it look like it's going to swing versus is there rain coming? And Crawley's got to bat and bat quickly. So yeah, I think if there is that element to Test cricket of like, you know what, if you do win the toss and get the best of conditions, that's just how the game plays out. So you'd lose a lot of the magic if you just chucked a roof on and everyone plays in the same conditions all year round, sort of thing. So yeah, I'm a big no on the roof, but I think there's some scope for extra days, especially if we're pantsing people at home. Just chuck them on there.
Lugsy, what did you think of some of those suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, we just can't do a roof, unfortunately. That's just not an option. It's that simple. I know this is a bit of an old one, but like I can accept the roof, like when they play some grounds in Aussie and you got a roof line, it's T20, it hits the roof and it's a bit of fun for everyone. I can accept that, but you just can't accept it in a Test cricket. I'm sorry. As Jacko says, the rain's probably it rears its ugly head, but it's less and less having even a factor though. Like in general, games are getting shorter and shorter, and rain's having a little effect. So obviously this is like the highest stakes, and it's played a major role. So obviously it's going to get attention for right now. But honestly, people will be over this in a few months, and rain won't be an issue. Extra time. Practically, I guess with deals and with Sky and everything, you can't just add a day here and there. There's just too many commitments. But as you see, in the odd test, it can work, but that's just going to be a massive rabbit hole of if all tests get an extra day or if only some do. So unfortunately, it's not really a solution either. I'm sorry to steal your point here, Munter, that you raised earlier. But just getting a general like, if we can just once and for all really fix and just playing 90 overs, like the game's 90 overs. You don't just see a rugby league game go 70 minutes because they're tired or like because they're fucking around. Like, I don't know. This seems like it feels like it's fixable. And it's just like every now and then everyone gets up in arms about it. And then we all say nothing and they'll just continue to play 75 overs. Like, that's the biggest one that's in the control of the actual players.
What sort of bothers me about the I guess the time, the lack of overs in a day is to me, it doesn't bother me as such, like if they get the overs in, but when you now need that extra time, you can't then complain about there's no extra time. Like when you've got Joe Root saying,
100%.
oh, why can't we just play till 10 o'clock? It's like, why can't you just play 90 overs? Why can't you just, and then you'd have extra time. Like
They'll play till 10 o'clock and still not get the 90.
It's like, if you use all that time that you had available at the start and then you ran out of time, it would feel sorry for you, but you can't waste time throughout the whole test and then complain there's not enough time. Like, let's play till 10 o'clock. It's like, well, that's ridiculous. So
yeah, I think like touching on that, there's potentially you could look at maybe the session times. Like Test cricket's quite rigid in terms of like each session's just 2 hours and it's 90 in a day. Whereas like, you know, your first class crickets, you're actually getting an extra hour of cricket in just by starting sort of half an hour early and having that slightly different session times. I think it's 2:30, 2:20 and 2 in first class cricket, and that's 100 overs in the day, I think, maybe 110 even. So yeah, I mean, if you just extend those session times even by sort of 20 minutes and 10 minutes and start half an hour early, we might even eliminate that that need. And if you are getting 100 overs in a day, you're actually almost getting a full extra day, just over half a day of Test cricket in potentially. And then, as you said, like games aren't going that long, but yeah, if you just extend things in general just a little bit, pack a bit more into each day, we might avoid losing these games to rain a bit more often.
100%. Yeah, just be a bit more flexible with those times. Like you can maybe sort of try and, like, if you know there's bad rain around, like you can sort of move around your lunches or your teas, and like if the weather's good, like maybe don't take lunch for another half an hour, try and make the most of it. Things like that. I think you're right. We could be a bit more flexible. But let's wind back the clock. Let's start it back at day one, or a few days before, actually, when the 2 11s were named. England unchanged. They've persisted with Mo and Ali at 3. Australia, they made a couple of changes. Hazelwood in for Bolland wasn't a massive surprise, but there was a bit of talk around Green or Marsh, and they've gone for both. Green came in for Murphy, which meant that we had no spinner for the first time in a long time, and Alex Carey batted at 8. Jacko, what were your thoughts on those 11s when they were named?
Yeah, I'll touch on one thing briefly, which I didn't get in the trial run, but I'm not about this England naming their test team like 17 days before the game starts. Name it at the toss then. Like, have some intrigue. Like, I just don't. I can't get around that being named like 48 hours into before then. But hold on, are the Ashes tonight? It's like, oh no, we're still 4 days away. England have just like shown their hand. But yeah, I mean, for me, it felt like England got the recipe right towards the back end of that third test and throughout it. So, yeah, that Brooks feels like a number 5 in Test cricket. I think that's his natural spot. And if Moen's putting his hand up to bat 3 and doing an okay job, I think they're happy to stick with it. Woakes and Wood, just electric. They've changed the series. They flipped it on its head, almost sort of just the 2 of them alone. So yeah, England did what they needed to. I think they couldn't have changed after that win and that momentum. So was really happy with that side. And then yeah, it felt like Aussie picked a side to retain the Ashes. It didn't really, like, obviously they're trying to win these games, but I mean, Alex Carey at 8 is very deep, especially with sort of Stark and Cummins 9 and 10. It's a very long batting order. They probably knew there was a bit of rain about and just thought, well, shit, we're just going to have to get into halfway into day 4, and if things aren't over, we've kept the urn. So yeah, they got themselves into that position by playing some really good cricket at the start of the series. So I mean, hats off to them for picking that. I suppose it could be a different story if you guys kicked on day 1. They're probably they were underdone there. They should have scored probably 400 plus, but yeah, they picked the side and with the rain around, and they got the draw and they keep the urn. So that's all she wrote.
Yeah, for sure. Lugsy, what did you make of the 11s? Were you surprised at all?
No, I wasn't. And obviously the way that played out, that last test, you can't even really get a reading on it. It felt like if it went 5 days, it might have cost Australia not having a spinner. But at the time, I was all for it. I just think sometimes you just got to pick your best 11 players. Having Marsh and Cam Green, it sort of, in general, you'd say it throws out your balance a bit. It feels like there's the only need for one of them. But I just don't think you could have dropped Marsh, and I don't think at the moment you don't want Cam Green in your side. So I was actually fine with it all. As you said, Jack, I think Mo and Elliott 3. I mean, he wants to do the job, and if that's their motto at the moment, isn't it? They're all about giving their guys who have got a bit of confidence to tell them to go out and do it. So I think Brendan would have just been like, mate, if you're wanting to do it, you go do it. So I was happy with him at 3 as well. So I was actually happy with both sides.
One thing I'll add that you guys didn't touch on was, well, you did, but I guess the key was like Todd Murphy isn't Nathan Lyon, so it's not when you need a spinner, it's not like you're replacing, one of the best spinners in the world with another greatest spinner in the world. Like it's a bit of an unknown with Todd Murphy, and it just felt like if they weren't going to trust him, that they needed to look elsewhere. I just think they wanted certain players on the park, and that's where they went to. So, and we'll discuss the bowling effort a bit later on, but so yeah, just England won the toss just for a change, and they decided to chase in Test cricket, which is basically their mantra now. Australia batted well, but they just couldn't quite get away from England. If someone had offered Australia that 5 out of the top 6 would make 30 plus, with Warner being one of them, and not getting out to Broad, I think Australia bite your hand off at that. You would expect one of those 5 to go on to get a big score. Unfortunately for them, the top scorer was only 51, Marnus and Mitchell Marsh. England were just able to pick up wickets regularly enough to keep Australia to, well, at the time, well, definitely now, but a below par 317. Chris Woakes took his first fifer against Australia with 5 for 62. You touched on it before, Jacko, but what an incredible selection and story this is for Chris Woakes. Thoroughly underappreciated, but him and Wood have obviously changed the series. Like I said, Jacko, if I had said one bowler would take 12 wickets at 19 and another bowler would take 4 wickets at 76, and you had to choose between Chris Woakes and Jimmy Anderson, who would you think would have been the better bowler coming into the series?
Oh yeah, I mean, as I've said previously, I don't even think Woakes was in the squad. Going into that's sort of how forgotten about he'd become in the English cricket scene. It was sort of Broad, Anderson, Woods there, these young sort of toplies coming through, and Robinson's got this amazing record, and he just was this forgotten man. And yeah, I mean, for those stats, for that to be him and Anderson to be an afterthought is, completely contradictory to what we all sort of probably thought was going to happen for this series.
I think you can sort of tell by the way the commentators talk about him, though, that I think he's quite rated, and I think everyone feels a bit sorry for him that he's just came around at this time. I think it's just, unfortunately, you just can't, pick them over the years. But I think I don't know. It seemed, especially in the commentary, like a lot of people very happy to see him get that 5 for against Australia.
Definitely felt like that sort of little era where England weren't too good. He was almost a scapegoat in the seamers rankings. Yeah, because Broad and Anderson have their records. They were always going to sort of survive, and you had like Wood and Archer coming through, so they were always going to survive because they bowled quick. And it just felt like Woakes is sort of, high 130s, swing bowling, and a bit of batting just just sort of copped the brunt of some underwhelming performances as a unit, as opposed to him actually being the worst player. So yeah, it's fantastic to see, and he's changed the series completely, I think.
100%. He's just added a little bit of zip off the pitch that perhaps some of the other bowlers haven't sort of been able to add. And you add that with his sort of batting. I think when you have him at 8, it just adds another sort of depth to that batting lineup that they probably didn't have. Like I think if you had, Broad coming in at 8, Broad coming in at 8, it just feels like 3 spots too high.
With that
feels high for Broad now.
So Australia made that 317, which felt sort of par, below par, but it very quickly became extremely below par. And that's because England finished day 2 at 384 for 4 off just 72 overs. Zak Crawley, 189 off just 182.
Now, Zach.
Player of the match. Unbelievable. Good. Before we get into my apology, it's fair to say that this is probably why they backed him for so long. It's not necessarily...
You're recording that separately because of its length, Munter, or...
I'll cut this out. That
on at the end.
Yeah. But it's just like it's just the way he scores his runs. It's the pace he scores his runs. Like his ability to put a bowling side under pressure like no one else can because of their length. So my question to you guys is, we'll start with you, Lugsy. Do we get it? Do we get the Zak Crawley experience now?
Well, I'm going to be a brave man if I come out and say no after that performance, aren't I? So I think you've said, and you're obviously copping the most of this month of being the front man for the pod. So, and we'll just let you cop that. But I think even in your defence, you've said a few times you get his talent. You just think against good bowling attacks with it moving around a bit, he can't survive. And I was going to message the group. I mentioned this, and I don't know why I'm saying this when no one knew, but like it was about 30 odd not out. And I was thinking, out of every sort of 6 or 7 balls, he looks bad for 5 of them, and he creams one of them for 4 and a remarkable shot. So like, I don't think he still looks like the greatest opener. And maybe just because of what we grew up on, the way Test cricket was, maybe we still have a want for like a traditional opener with a sound defence. I don't know, but he still plays and misses it a lot and can look pretty ugly, but I'm not going to throw a flag on a friggin' amazing performance where he's just taking it to one of the best bowling attacks in the world and sort of on the top of the bounce, creaming them to all parts of the boundary. So there's not a lot you can really say, is it? It's an amazing performance.
Oh, I just need a minute to sort of collect my thoughts here before I have a crack. So where are you at there, Jacko?
Yeah. I mean, if we look back, ball 1 of the series, pretty ominous for you, wasn't it? Well, for the pod as a whole. So I think, as Crom said, we were all relatively.
I like it's for me.
Crawley,
it's just my take now.
Yeah. Well, as
you
Crom
in the
said,
hardest.
you've been taking the brunt of it, but if you go back, Crom and I were all about Zak Crawley. No, obviously he just has his faults as a Test opener, which we've seen, but yeah, every now and then an innings like that, you can brush over getting bowled or sort of nicking off to wide half volleys a few times if, once a series or when games are on the line, he's going to do that. So just a fantastic innings. And I think after 2 days, it was probably like we talked about loving that Aussie selection, but after 2 days, it was sort of worst case for them because they picked a side to bat deep and everyone got a start and no one got going and they were sort of skittled for 300 where they probably should have scored, well into the 400s. So, and then for England to just bludgeon them for a day, it really felt like sort of worst case for Aussie. So, yeah, I mean, after 2 days, England, that was just baseball at its peak. I thought we were sort of going towards something really special. And I suppose we'll touch on it when we get to day 3. But that Stokes' declaration has come under a bit of fire. But yeah, through 2 days, you couldn't have faulted England one bit. I didn't think.
I mean, I guess this is probably the time where I have made an apology video, which it wasn't really an apology because I do sort of stand by my comments to a degree. Like like Lugsy said, I potentially went a little bit harder than I needed to. And that's the power of social media, I guess. You do that every now and then. But I guess like my issue along the line was just the lack of improvement. It was just like he kept banging his head against the wall, expecting a different result. And I still think he's sort of changed that a little bit, because it's not just one good innings. I think he's been good the whole series. Like he's sort of put the Australian bowlers under pressure. I mean, he's a leading run scorer, but he's been quite selective in the way he goes about it. Like I don't think it's just as reckless as it was. Having said that, I did read a couple of stats that would suggest that Lugsy is onto something with the way he did it. So he basically, it was apparently they have this like shot control stat. So they it's like CricViz or whatever like that. And Zak Crawley's 100 is the 6th luckiest 100 of all time, apparently, since they did that. So
terrible innings.
So,
you can always find a stat to back your take up, eh? You can always find something.
Yeah, you can dig. I'm like one
You
of those
dig deep
COVID
enough,
people,
you'll get something.
I'm like one of those COVID people. Nah, it doesn't work. Won't go down that.
They need to replace the batteries in the birds.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously England, we touched on it. England ended up with 5 for 92 off 107 overs after day 3. 6 of England's top 7 would make 50 plus. Moeen Ali 50, Root 80 odd, Brooks 60, Stokes 51, Bairstow 99 not out off 81 balls. Any of those innings particularly stand out, boys?
Yeah, I mean, feels like Bairstow's lost all kudos for that 100 for raising his bat on the way off for his 99. Did see a snap of that, which is a touch tough. But no, I mean, yeah. But no, Bairstow I thought particularly good. Obviously Crawley immense, but there's a lot of heat on a few of these English kids, especially sort of Bairstow, the way he's kept a little bit and probably the runs haven't been there, but it looks like he's getting back to his sort of best form, which is great for the game in general, because he's truly is probably one of the great batting talents going around in world cricket. So, it was great to see for Bairstow to be back in a way.
I just think it had just sort of was the innings they had been wanting to play this whole series. Like, I think England came out and were just, in these first couple of tests especially, and were just so almost desperate to prove Bazball works that they just blew their load. Like, they just went too hard too early. Without they just went over the top, you know?
We've all been there.
Yeah, well, haven't we? But yeah, they were just honestly like, I don't know why I'm keeping going here. They were like a young, young guy out. They were just like a young guy going out drinking with older mates and sort of trying to prove he can drink and just necking them too quick. And they were just like, we think Bazball's the way to go, and we're just going to go so hard so early. And it was just almost a bit much. And then it's like they rethought it after the break and came back for those 3rd and 4th tests, and it actually controlled themselves a bit more and got the actual innings they're capable of, because they don't, obviously the way they play it, they don't need to force it even more. They're all unbelievably talented guys, and they sort of had a bit more control and just played, unbelievable shots. And it was like the innings we were all waiting for, I guess, this whole time.
Yeah, well summed up, lads. I won't touch on too much more than that, but I do want to bring attention to Australia with the ball. Obviously Hazelwood managed 5. Well picked, by the way, Jacko. 5, but it was 5 for 126. So I can't imagine he's getting that ball on a trophy on the mantelpiece sort of thing. Like, remember my 5 for at Old Trafford.
But Munter, I will say in 10 years, that's a 5 for in the game they retain the earn in England.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, this is like this is Scalabrini winning an NBA championship when he's changing how many minutes he's played by the decade, which I rate.
To be fair, just about now, that's probably 5 for 30 odd. Josh is walking around the changing room telling everyone.
How hard are they going, do you reckon, on on a complete side note, are they going hard?
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
How
I
many,
think
how many
because of
goes with the Sun,
2019 they're
under
not.
the Southern Cross?
I think because of
Yeah.
2019 they because they admitted they went too hard, and then like basically just lost the last test when they really shouldn't have. They're sort of pretty focused on winning it.
I was
Yeah, I think
just
they still want
sorry
to get that winning series off the back, don't they?
yeah, I've been pretty impressed with like with Marnus. I've seen a few interviews with Marnus, and he's quite good
Oh,
to
yeah.
listen to because he's pretty open. And like he
Yeah.
seems like he's itching to win this fifth test. I don't know how. I was just thinking about this earlier. Sorry to go off topic, but I'm completely lost with how I feel about Marnus as a bloke. Like I've gone ups and
Oh, yeah.
downs. Like where are we at? He
I
burst
mean,
on the scene. I was like, this guy loves Girk. I rate it. He's playing unreal. Then I just got a bit sick of him, like hearing him chirp the whole time, and it was pretty poor chatter. And now I've heard him a few times. I'm like back to sort of quite liking him. I'm a bit lost with Marnus.
yeah, I was ready to touch on this. It's been what a couple of days for our Marnus. I mean, 100 gets the monkey off the back. You know, can't score, runs away from home, and then that little interview clip of a guy asking him like, you know, would you guys
Yeah,
declare? And he's just like so dumbfounded. He's like, well, no, like the earn's ours if we just like draw this game. Like, what do you mean? And
yeah.
then that bit of just, you know, him getting to see the new ball and then getting a hoop in an and being ready for it, just sort of getting under the skin a bit. I thought fantastic couple of days for Marnus and his brand.
Big comeback.
Well, he was like Marnus was like he was like we'll be only like 60 ahead. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you think we're gonna like? We can't win. Like, not everyone
Yeah.
has to play that way.
We're 60 behind. Like, yeah, it's
What
like,
do you,
yeah, there's no way we can get into a winning
what,
position in this
it's
test match.
not- but I was happy that he got that 100. He might as well push forward to talk about his 100, because that felt very important. Like not necessarily, obviously, like they didn't play on the fifth day, so it wasn't as important. But just feels like going into that fifth test, getting Marnus a score, like you said, getting that monkey off the back. How important do you think that was?
Oh, yeah, massive. I think Aussie is such a good team at home because Marnus is really, really good in Australia. And that 3 and 4 of, you know, when the openers are done, you've got Marnus coming in who scores runs for fun, and then you've got one of the greatest batters of the generation. And Aussie just felt a bit frail at the top in this series at times, with Marnus not scoring runs and Warner getting out to Broad, sort of left, right, and centre. So I think it just shores up that batting a little bit more and really just rounds out how Aussie want to play. So yeah, in terms of, you know, Test 5, if Marnus was in form going into Test 5, it's huge for him and it's huge for the series because he would have heard all that chatter around can't score runs away from home and everything. So yeah, to just that prove yourself moment of, you know, Ash's hundreds away from home are really big moments for batters like that. So yeah, massive for him.
Yeah, I get the feeling he reads absolutely everything and hears absolutely everything. Like
Friend of the show.
he just seems yeah, he's a student of the game, man. He just loves it. It was cool to hear him with talking with Punter, and I think Ponting sort of talked about how you could see he wasn't obviously in the best nick, but it was building. And so yeah, for him to finally get the ton, I think everyone as cricket fans sort of likes to see that. And it's obviously going to mean nothing in the end, but that's still a very important 100. Like, you don't know going into day 5, it's just going to piss down and mean nothing. But
No.
at the time, it was still pretty crucial 100. So yeah, I thought
Without
really
those
good
runs,
innings. And yeah,
without those runs, they could have lost that test.
yeah,
Like if he goes
100%.
out for 20 or 30, they're probably 160 for 6 or 7, and that they could get run through very easily. So yeah, in the context of the game, one of the bigger Ashes hundreds in a while, probably, when you look back at it from an Aussie perspective.
Righto, that is us for another week. If you enjoyed the show and you want a little bit more content, check out patreon.com/maximumcricket to support us for one coffee a month, almost less than a coffee nowadays, to be fair, because some of those coffees are expenny as you like. You will be getting the following: the exclusive audio to One Extra podcast that is out every Friday, early access to the main podcast, special access to TMC's Discord channel, which is still to be set up. And the first priority for questions when we do our live Q&A at the end of the Ashes. If you can't join it but you still want to support the cause, please leave a like, give us a rating, subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on Apple. This all helps us grow as a community and get discovered. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to Jacko and Lugsy, of course. We will catch you next week.